Late autumn had settled over Maple Glen, the kind of cozy New England town where orange leaves clung stubbornly to front yard trees like they didn't want to admit winter was coming. The town was a patchwork of colonial-style homes, red brick sidewalks, old decorative lampposts wrapped in fresh garlands, and corner bakeries that smelled like cinnamon year-round. A chilly November breeze kept sweeping down Evergreen Street, tugging at scarves, rattling porch pumpkins that should have been put away days ago, and carrying the faint smell of firewood from houses whose owners got seasonally excited the second temperatures dropped below 50. Inside one of those homes stood Evan Parker, early 30s, American to his bones, medium build, light brown slightly messy hair that always looked like he'd just run his hands through it, even on days he hadn't, and warm hazel eyes that always gave away that he was processing 12 ideas at once. His clean-shaven jaw was scrunched with determination as he stood in his kitchen, sleeves rolled to his elbows, apron so new that the creases were still sharp enough to cut someone. And he was cooking. Trying to cook. Wishing he were cooking. What he was actually doing was staging the early scenes of what might have eventually become a disaster documentary titled, The Parker Kitchen Incident, a case study in human error. The idea started simply enough. Maple Glen's annual community comfort food cook-off was only a few days away. A beloved town tradition, held in the rec center gym next to the Little League field, it brought together families, seniors, college students home for a visit, and everyone in between. The prize wasn't money, just a blue ribbon, bragging rights, and the eternal honor of your name written on a hand-painted wooden board that hung in town hall like a sacred relic. Evan had never entered, not once. He'd gone every year, sampled food like a tourist on a mission, but competing. That required skills he didn't have. Or so he assumed. But 2 weeks earlier, during a grocery store parking lot conversation with his neighbor Karen Donnelly, a retired high school counselor with sharp wit and a sharper ability to talk people into things, he blurted out something bold. I might enter this year. Karen's eyes had lit up like she'd just discovered treasure at a yard sale. Oh, what dish, Evan? She'd asked. He had no dish. None. So, naturally, he made one up on the spot. Parker's perfect autumn stew. Karen gasped in delight. You have a signature stew. Evan, that's wonderful. He did not have a signature stew. But 2 weeks later, here he was, standing in his kitchen at 6:45 in the evening, trying to reverse engineer a dish that had never existed in the first place. The kitchen itself was classic small-town New England. White shaker cabinets, butcher block counters sealed with a glossy finish, a large farmhouse sink, and a fridge covered in magnets from road trips Evan had taken with friends who had since moved away. A ceiling-mounted pot rack hung above the island, a detail he'd always thought looked sophisticated, until the moment a dangling ladle bopped him in the forehead. The recipe he was attempting was scribbled on the back of a grocery receipt in handwriting that started neat but quickly devolved into chaotic loops once he realized he didn't actually know how to make stew. On that paper were the words, brown meat right pointing arrow add things right pointing arrow simmer. A confident chef he was not. And so began disaster. The first mistake was overconfidence. He heated the pan too hot, so hot the oil screamed when the beef hit it. A fire alarm level sizzle shot up, making him jump backward with the grace of a cat slipping off a countertop. The second mistake was distraction. His phone buzzed. A text from his friend Noah Reyes, who worked at the town's hardware store and often teased him for being a danger to himself in any room with appliances. Noah, how's the stew coming? Should Maple Glen invest in new fire trucks ahead of time? Evan rolled his eyes, quickly typed back with flour-dusted fingers. Evan, it's going fine. I'm a natural. The beef was not fine. It was definitely burning. By the time he turned back to the stove, fumes had begun to swirl. Not smoke, just those dramatic food failure fumes unique to amateur cooks and anyone who trusts recipes with the phrase, cook until it feels right. He panicked, grabbed salt, too much salt, grabbed pepper, too much pepper. Then, in a frantic attempt to balance the flavors, he poured in apple cider vinegar directly from the bottle. The stew hissed like it was offended. Oh, come on, work with me, he muttered. That's when the doorbell rang. He froze. Why now? He speed-walked to the front door, swung it open, and found Mrs. Landry, the elderly widow next door whose hearing was incredible when it came to gossip and terrible when it came to everything else. She wore a knitted cranberry red sweater, jeans ironed within an inch of their life, and a smile so sweet it could have been sold at the town bakery. I smelled something, she said cheerfully. Oh good, Evan forced a smile. It's supposed to smell like stew. Oh dear, she frowned. I thought it was smoke from someone burning leaves. Nope, just cooking. She handed him a plate of pumpkin spice cookies, her signature thing. For inspiration. Thank you, he said, wishing inspiration smelled less like carbon. When she left, he hurried back to the kitchen, only to find the stew bubbling in a manner that suggested revenge. He stirred. The spoon got stuck, not metaphorically, actually physically stuck, like the mixture had formed an adhesive stronger than the glue used in elementary school craft disasters. This is fine, he told himself. It was not fine. The next 30 minutes were a slapstick montage straight out of a sitcom with an unusually high budget for kitchen catastrophes. He dropped a jar of paprika. It didn't break, but it rolled like a runaway wheel under the cabinet, never to be retrieved again. He sliced onions and cried so dramatically that anyone outside the house might have assumed he was going through a devastating breakup. He attempted a flourish, flipping diced potatoes into the pot like a chef in a viral cooking video, only for half of them to bounce off the stove and skitter across the floor, chased immediately by his horror and a frantic attempt to clean before the potatoes staged a full escape. He added broth. Broth splashed, drenching his shirt like he'd been hit with an autumn-themed water balloon. Outside the kitchen window, the late autumn sky darkened into a deep blue, and strings of warm porch lights flickered on across the neighborhood. Kids returning from after-school clubs crunched along leaf-covered sidewalks, while parents in puffy jackets called them in for dinner. Inside the Parker house, however, the only dinner cooking might have been a federal hazard. At 7:30, his door rattled with firm knocking, the kind that meant someone older, someone confident, or someone bringing judgment. It was all three. On the front porch stood Karen Donnelly, wrapped in a brown wool coat and a scarf decorated with tiny turkeys, pre-Thanksgiving apparel she wore proudly every year. Her silver hair was tied in a soft bun, her glasses perched low on her nose, and her expression was one of deep concern. "I smelled something," she said. Evan winced. "Everyone keeps saying that today." She brushed past him like a general entering a battlefield. "Step aside. Show me the damage." In the kitchen, she stopped dead. "My goodness," she whispered. "It looks like the 4th of July happened indoors." "That bad?" he squeaked. Karen bent over the stove, poked the stew with a wooden spoon, and her eyebrows climbed high enough they nearly left her face. "This is dense." "It's artisanal," he said weakly. "It's geological," she corrected. He let out an embarrassed groan, dragging his hands over his face. "I don't know what I'm doing. The cook-off is in 3 days, Karen. I'm going to be the only person to ever be disqualified before arriving." She straightened, crossed her arms, and gave him a look only decades of counseling could sharpen. "Well," she said finally, "there's only one solution." "What? Cancel my registration?" "Absolutely not," she gasped. "People need to see you try." "No, Evan, you're going to learn." "Learn what?" She grinned. "To cook something edible." He blinked. "Is that possible?" "With help," she said. And that's when she texted him a name. Mia Thompson. A 30-something well-loved local baker who ran Thompson's Hearth, the warm, cozy shop next to the library, famous for its apple crumble that locals argued should be a state treasure. Mia was friendly, patient, and surprisingly down-to-earth. She also had a reputation for being a kitchen whisperer, someone who could teach even a hopeless beginner to make something good. "I'll text her," Karen said. "She owes me a favor." "Don't ask." Evan paced while she typed. Within minutes, Mia replied with, "Tell him I'll stop by in 20 minutes. I'm making hot cider anyway." When Karen relayed the message, Evan felt a sudden mixture of relief and dread. Relief because maybe the night could still be saved. Dread because someone was going to witness what he had done to this kitchen. 20 minutes later, there was another knock. This one was different. Gentle, rhythmic, a friendly I-come-in-peace kind of knock. Evan opened the door to find Mia, holding a thermos and wearing a cream-colored sweater under a caramel-colored quilted vest, jeans tucked into full boots, and a warm smile that made people instantly feel like they had entered a safe zone. Her curly dark blonde hair was tied loosely, and a few strands danced in the chilly breeze. Her blue-gray eyes sparkled, either with kindness or curiosity or the anticipation of witnessing something chaotic. Given the smell wafting from Evan's house, probably all three. "I brought cider," she said, stepping inside. "I figured we'd need emotional support beverages." Karen clapped her hands like a proud grandmother. "See, teamwork already." In the kitchen, Mia set the thermos on the counter, surveyed the scene, and gave a sympathetic, amused nod. "Okay," she said, "this is not the worst I've ever seen." "Really?" Evan asked hopefully. "I said not the worst. This is definitely top 5. He groaned again. Mia rolled up her sleeves. "Let's start with what we can salvage." The next hour was a whirlwind of instruction, laughter, chaos, and tiny miracles. MIA showed him how to properly sauté onions instead of scorching them. She taught him how to deglaze the pot. No, Evan, gently, gently, and how seasoning was not the same thing as emptying half a jar of something into a dish. She rescued the broth by straining it. She rescued the meat by refusing to let him throw it out. Crispy isn't always bad. She tasted his stew. She did not die, though her face did scrunch in a way that suggested her tongue was filing a complaint. It needs adjustment, she said diplomatically. With teamwork, they started a new batch together. Evan chopped vegetables with exaggerated caution, terrified of amputating anything important. MIA narrated each step with warm humor, guiding him like a cooking GPS that didn't judge too hard. You're doing great, she said. His potato cubes were uneven. Very uneven. But keep trying. By 9 o'clock, a pleasant aroma finally drifted through the house. Rich broth, simmering beef, savory herbs, and something subtly sweet from the carrots. Evan inhaled deeply. It smells like actual food. It is actual food, MIA said proudly. Karen sniffed the air dramatically. No more burning leaf smell. They all laughed. By the time the stew was done, they sat at the small kitchen table, 3 bowls, 3 spoons, 3 hopeful expressions. Evan took the first bite. He froze. MIA watched, eyebrows lifted slightly in suspense. Karen held her spoon aloft like she was participating in a cooking reality show. He swallowed. It's good, Evan whispered. It's actually good. Karen cheered. MIA grinned, and Evan let out a relieved laugh that filled the whole kitchen. But the moment was more than just stew tasting good. It was the first spark of something else, something warm, supportive, communal. Something that reminded Evan that life didn't demand perfection for things to turn out well. Sometimes it just demanded help. And humor, and patience, and people who showed up when you were staring down the barrel of culinary disaster. Outside, leaves rustled, the wind swirled, porch lights glowed warmly across Maple Glen, and in that kitchen, for the first time all week, everything felt right. He didn't know it yet, but this night, this ridiculous, messy, chaotic night, was about to change more than just his cooking skills. It was going to change him. Morning arrived in Maple Glen the way it always did in late November, slow, crisp, and gold. The sun peeked over the houses lining Evergreen Street as if politely checking whether everyone was ready for the day. It cast a warm light over the damp sidewalks, the leftover leaves that had glued themselves to the pavement after last night's drizzle, the mailboxes decorated in early holiday ribbons, and the porches cluttered with pumpkins that were now in that awkward stage between festive and should have gone in the trash already. Inside his house, Evan Parker stood at the kitchen counter, staring at a mug of coffee like it was an opponent in a high-stakes mental battle. The events of last night replayed in his mind, the chaos, the smoke, the stew glue, the rescue, the teamwork, Mia's patient laugh, Karen's enthusiastic commentary. And finally, the victory. He had made stew. Actual stew. Edible stew. Possibly even good stew. But today was the real test. The Community Comfort Food Cook-Off was only 48 hours away. And while last night's success had been a miracle, Evan knew he couldn't win the cook-off with a dish that existed because MIA had basically quarterbacked the entire operation. If he was going to put his name on something, it had to be something he made. Himself. His phone buzzed. It was Noah from the hardware store. Noah, so how's the culinary prodigy this morning? Should we all evacuate the neighborhood before breakfast? Evan snorted. Evan, no explosions. Making coffee without burning anything. Progress. Noah, wow. Slow down, Gordon Ramsay. A knock at the door interrupted the message thread. Evan opened it to find MIA Thompson, holding a reusable grocery bag and smiling like she hadn't been up half the night helping him turn his kitchen from a hazard zone into a home again. Morning, she chirped. Ready for round 2? I thought you'd never want to see this kitchen again, he laughed. Nonsense, she waved it off. Besides, Karen texted me at 7 a.m. saying, get over there before he ruins the pot again. So here I am. Oh good. Reinforcements. MIA stepped inside, placing her bag on the kitchen island. Today she wore a sage green sweater layered under a cream puffer vest, jeans tucked into soft brown boots, and her hair pulled back with a clip shaped like a tiny acorn. It was impossibly, almost performance-level autumnal. Evan gestured to the stove. I figure we should practice the stew again, right? She shook her head. Nope. No, nope. He blinked. But the stew came out good. It came out good because we watched it like hawks and micromanaged every step. You need something that fits you. Something you can make without fear of the universe collapsing. Well, that's oddly accurate. She patted the grocery bag. Which is why today we're doing something else. He raised an eyebrow. What else? A new recipe. He almost choked on his coffee. A new recipe. The cook-off is in 2 days. Yes, and if we start now, you'll have time to perfect it. Trust me. Trust you. Last time that resulted in me sauté onions so aggressively the smoke alarm filed a complaint. She laughed. That was before we bonded as a culinary team. He laughed too. Is that what we are now? A team? Absolutely, she said, hands on hips. And today we're creating your signature dish. Evan stared at her, trying to hide the fact that hearing the words your signature dish gave him goosebumps. Okay, he said, bracing himself. Hit me. She pulled out ingredients. Fresh herbs, heavy cream, shredded rotisserie chicken, chopped celery, carrots, garlic, wide egg noodles, and homemade broth she had brought from her bakery. The aroma drifting from that jar alone could have won first place. Let me guess, he said, watching her unload items. Soup. She smirked. Not just soup. Chicken noodle comfort casserole. He blinked. A casserole? Yep. I've never made a casserole. Perfect. Then you can't mess up old habits. He pointed dramatically. That feels like a personal jab. Maybe, she teased, then handed him the cutting board. Let's begin. For the next hour, the kitchen became a warm, bustling workspace. MIA guided him through slicing the carrots thin enough to cook evenly but thick enough to hold their shape. He minced garlic with exaggerated caution while she tried not to laugh. They whisked the creamy base together, stirred it into the noodles and chicken, and folded everything into a casserole dish that looked like it belonged in a holiday commercial. Just as Evan sprinkled the last layer of crushed crackers on top, the doorbell rang. Karen, again. Inspection time, she announced as she marched inside like she had legal authority over Evan's cooking. Behind her appeared Mrs. Landry, holding a Tupperware of cranberry sauce as if it were a sacred offering. We brought moral support, Karen declared. And dessert, Mrs. Landry added proudly. Evan exchanged a look with MIA. We're popular today, he whispered. Your kitchen is now a community event, she whispered back. The casserole baked, filling the house with aromas so comforting and nostalgic that even the stove seemed to sigh contentedly. The group gathered around the counter, bowls and forks ready. Evan scooped the first serving. It steamed like a tiny autumn miracle. He tasted it. His eyebrows shot upward. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Karen tasted hers. Well, I'll be, Evan, this might actually win. Mrs. Landry took a bite and promptly patted Evan's arm. This is delicious. You should be proud. MIA watched him with a soft smile. See, you just needed the right recipe. He looked at her, grateful in a way words rarely captured. Thank you. Seriously. That night, after everyone left, Evan cleaned the kitchen while replaying the moment in his mind. Not just the tasting, the teamwork, the laughter, the way MIA explained things with patience instead of criticism. How she made the kitchen feel less like a battle zone and more like a place where things could grow, change, and work out. He practiced the casserole twice more before bed, determined to prove last night wasn't a fluke. And each attempt improved, not dramatically, but meaningfully. Like life, messy progress that tastes better each time. Saturday morning arrived with brisk cold air and skies as clean as polished glass. The Maple Glen Recreation Center, a squat brick building with a faded mural of the high school mascot, buzzed with activity. Cars lined the parking lot. People carried crockpots, foil-covered trays, and carefully balanced casserole dishes like priceless antiques. Inside, folding tables covered in gingham cloth formed rows across the gym. Holiday lights framed the basketball hoops, and volunteers wearing Maple Glen Cooks shirts scurried around setting up last-minute additions. Evan stood by his assigned table, wearing a navy sweater, jeans, and an apron that read, "My cooking is finally edible." MIA had given it to him that morning, saying, "Manifest positivity." He didn't know what that meant but appreciated the moral support. He placed the casserole dish, still warm from the oven, on the table. It glowed, literally glowed under the overhead lights like it had main character energy today. Footsteps approached. It was Mayor Latham, a big man with a big mustache and bigger enthusiasm for community events. "Ah, Evan," the mayor boomed. New face among the competitors. "Love to see it. What do you have here?" Evan pulled himself together. "Chicken noodle comfort casserole." "Comfort?" The mayor clapped. "Wonderful theme. We need more comfort in this world. He moved on, leaving Evan slightly dizzy from the encounter. MIA arrived moments later. You good? I've been verbally hugged by the mayor, Evan said. I think I'm fine. They're about to start, she said, straightening his apron. Ready? No, he said honestly. She grinned. Perfect. That means you care. The judging began. Crowds filtered past the tables, tasting, smiling, commenting. Kids ran around with tiny sample cups, announcing which dishes tasted weird or tasted amazing, with chaotic, childlike honesty. Elderly residents argued passionately about seasoning. Teenagers Instagrammed everything. When they reached Evan's table, people leaned in immediately. Smells amazing, one man said. Looks cozy, a woman added. Is this the casserole Karen was talking about? Asked someone from the back. Word had spread. Evan served. People tasted. And, miracle after miracle, every single one of them smiled. It's perfect for a cold day, one said. Warm and hearty, said another. Reminds me of my grandma's cooking, said a third. His chest swelled. It wasn't pride in the bragging way. It was pride in the I made something that made people happy way. Karen and Mrs. Landry hovered nearby like two supportive hawks. You're winning something, Karen whispered. Even if you don't win, you've already won, Mrs. Landry added. Finally, the judges approached, Mayor Latham, Councilwoman Hendricks, and Chef Rourke from the new farm-to-table restaurant outside town. They tasted in silence. Chef Rourke took an extra bite. Mayor Latham nodded slowly. Councilwoman Hendricks scribbled something on her card. Evan forgot how to breathe. After what felt like 3 winters passing, they moved on. The suspense was torture. Finally, the results were announced on the temporary stage. Third place went to a high school student who made spicy chili. Second place to an elderly duo who'd created a dessert lasagna, much to the crowd's fascination. And first place, announced the mayor, pausing dramatically even though everyone hated dramatic pauses, goes to. Evan held his breath. Evan Parker, for his chicken noodle comfort casserole. The gym erupted. Karen screamed louder than necessary. Mrs. Landry cried. Children clapped. Someone yelled, I knew it. Noah texted him, holy, dude. And Evan, stunned, walked onto the stage like he was floating. The mayor shook his hand. Someone snapped photos. The blue ribbon felt lighter than air. And the wooden board, the tradition of Maple Glen, would have his name carved next week. After the ceremony, as the crowd thinned, MIA found him near the dessert table. You did it, she said. No, he said, shaking his head. We did it. She smiled. You cooked it. You owned it. Evan, you deserved this. He looked at her, really looked at her, and warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with casserole. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For helping me discover something better than the stew. Something better than the disaster. Something I didn't know I could do. Recipes can surprise you, she said. And so can people. Outside the rec center, autumn leaves skittered across the parking lot, and families loaded leftovers into cars. The cold air felt refreshing. Alive. Full of possibility. Evan stood there, ribbon in hand, casserole dish under his arm, and the feeling that sometimes life's best outcomes grow from its messiest beginnings. He'd burned a pot. He'd nearly poisoned himself. He'd almost given up. And in the middle of all that chow, he'd discovered not just a better recipe, but a better version of himself.
Daily happiness and motivation is hitting in. Like and subscribe.